Good morning everybody, and welcome to Sour Howes in the Far Eastern Lake District, otherwise known as Applethwaite Common. Now this, I think, is the most southerly of the Far Eastern Fells. We're not that far away from Windermere here. And as you can see, we've got a beautiful sunrise going on. And when I first arrived, there was a beautiful red sky. But the problem here is that there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of features with which to build a photograph around. And so I was in a bit of a rush. I managed to find a sort of rocky outcrop that kind of did the job, but I'm not particularly optimistic. And sometimes when you find that you're in that kind of situation, as a photographer, the only thing that you can do is just kick back and enjoy the sunrise.
Hear the songs above my head, they are nearly faded. Every day I'm unafraid to be the last who made it.
Whenever I come to the Far Eastern Fells, my aim is really to capture some of the essence of a place, what it feels like to be here, what are its main features. And up here, it's a bit of a funny old summit, and there's quite a lot of lumpy bumpy bits, a lot of undulations, so I suspect that they're going to feature quite heavily in my photographs this morning. Now, because we're on the southern edge of the Far Eastern Fells, as we look north, there are quite a lot of impressive mountains, and if I'd bothered to look at my phone or my Wainwright's guide, I'd be able to tell you what they were. But I'm guessing it's part of the Kentmere Horseshoe, because Kentmere's not far, it's only over that way. Maybe even the High Street Range, actually, over there. I really should do my research. So yeah, I've got a pretty good mid-ground, and I've got a pretty good background. But foreground is somewhat lacking, and this has to be one of the least impressive summit cairns I think I've ever seen. Now, photography is supposed to be fun, and since I went full-time, I think on occasion I'm perhaps guilty of taking myself and my photography a little bit too seriously. And so I want to have a little bit of fun with this shot. And I want to include this cairn. I can't really call it a cairn, it's a pile of rocks really. Not even a particularly big one, impressive one of those. But I want to include that in the photograph as a little bit of a funny joke. And then I've got the view to the north. So we've got these beautiful undulations in the mid-ground, and then in the background we've got the mountains. I think that's going to make quite a nice shot. Now, what I want to do is I want to wait for the sun to get a bit higher. It's actually been caught yet again by another band of cloud on the horizon. That seems to be where the clouds hang around. So yeah, when I get a shot, I want the sun to light up these undulations and give them a bit more definition. So I'm just going to hang on for a minute and keep my fingers crossed that actually happens. I think the other thing that helps with this shot is that there's a path running through that acts as a bit of a leading line, drawing your eye into the scene. I'll tell you what, I've taken worse photographs than that before. Now, I'm not usually the sort of person that feels the cold, but I have to say it's absolutely Baltic up here this morning. I've got no idea what the temperature is, but there's no way it's much more than 4 or 5 degrees. And let's not forget, this is supposed to be the summer. This is July. It's supposed to be a lot warmer than this. Absolutely freezing, and it's been like this for the last week or so. The summers here just recently have not been particularly great. Anyway, that's enough of that moaning. Normally when I do this, what I want to get, I want to come away with 2 or 3 images. I think I've got my first one. I think we're good to go. I now want to spend a little bit of time exploring some of the undulations around here, some of the little hilly bits and some of the different angles and some of the different views, and see if I can't find something a little bit more interesting to put in my foreground than a couple of stones. As you come a bit further north, you get a better view of the fells. Unfortunately, the light is as flat as a pancake now, and there just isn't a lot of contrast out there, not a lot of detail. Really could do with a bit of light on it. I have to be honest, I still don't know what they're called, I haven't looked it up, but then, you know, I could probably just tell you anything and you'd believe me. Alright, that one's called Bob Pike, and that one's Harry Style. Harry Style, why does that sound familiar? As I've been wandering around, I've come across these two sheep that are on this little mound here. And it's quite a nice little scene. You've got the sheep on the mound, then to the left-hand side you've got views of Windermere, and then behind them you've got the fells. I think it's the Coniston range. I think we're looking towards the old man of Coniston. That's quite a nice little shot, and let's be honest, I'm struggling to find a lot else this morning. As I've come further and further west, I start to get better and better views of Windermere, and I've got now right to the edge of Sour House, and it's a fantastic view. But I don't think it's a photograph. I don't really feel much for this scene, so I don't think I'm not going to take a shot. And to be honest with you, it's been a bit of a struggle up here. It is largely quite featureless, and I just haven't seen anything that I think was going to make a better shot than the one that I got right at the start of the morning with those tiny pile of stones. Now often when I come out into the Far Eastern Fells, I get blown away by the scope for photography, and I make plans to come back again with the bigger camera and all the filters and all that kind of stuff, but I don't think I'm going to be hurrying back here, I have to be honest. We were talking a little bit earlier about how photography was supposed to be fun, and a few people recently have made comments suggesting that I'm not having as much fun as a full-time photographer than I was as an amateur. But actually nothing could be further from the truth. The truth is, and this might not sometimes come across in the videos, particularly when I'm talking about some of the frustrations that I find, but I'm actually loving my photography at the moment. I'm having so much fun, and I think that's largely down to the fact that I think I've seen a big improvement in my photography over recent months, and I'm certainly much happier with a lot of the work that I'm producing. Perhaps not so much in these videos about the Far Eastern Fells, because often I'm not getting the right conditions, and you know, struggling a little bit to find compositions at new locations that I've never visited before. But on my other photography, my other approach to photography, the tripod and the big DSLR and filters and all that guff, I'm starting to really produce some images that I'm much happier with. And I think that's largely part to the fact that I think I've finally got the hang of my wide-angle lens, and I'm starting to introduce a lot more foreground into my images. Traditionally, I didn't shoot with a lot of foreground, but that is something that's now creeping into my work, and that's adding a lot more depth to my photographs. And certainly since lockdown, I've been very pleased with my images. I think I've probably got somewhere in the region of 4, maybe even as much as 5 portfolio quality images, and there's definitely nothing that makes photography more fun than when you feel you're getting some of your best work. I've now come so far west that I've reached this dry stone wall, and I think we're going to call this the boundary of the fell. Go any further and I'm not really shooting on the fell anymore. So I'm going to pack my gear away and then I'm going to head home. Before I do that, I just want to point out a mountain over there that I do recognise. It's the Tongue, and it is the lowest fell in the Far Eastern Fells, and that might very well be my next location. That might be where I'm going to go next week. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, this morning might not have been particularly productive, but it has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed myself. It's been wonderful to be out, and I've had a great morning. And we often say that it's not always about the photographs. Sometimes it's just about being out and in the countryside, in the hills, and just enjoying yourself. And I've definitely done that. You could say it's been a lot of fun.